I just came back from the Apple Store with the new iPhone 13 Pro, so let's unbox it today. So I'm gonna take it outside the bag. All right, so here it is. I got it in the Sierra blue color, and there's no plastic on this. We flip it over to the back side, and we have a couple tabs to pull. Peel this now. Just lift this up. Whoa, let's put this to the side. So inside the box, we get Apple stickers, the SIM eject tool, as well as a lightning to USB-C cable, but that's pretty much it for what's inside the box. All right, let's peel the film on the iPhone right now. Oh, gonna choose English. Just right off the bat, I can tell that the 120 Hz display is a lot smoother. I've tried out 90 Hz refresh rates on a couple Android phones, the OnePlus 7T, the OnePlus 7 Pro, and Google's Pixel 5. And this definitely does feel smoother, obviously because it's 120 Hz versus 90 Hz. So I've been testing out the iPhone 13 Pro for the past few hours, and I've been liking it so far. I've pretty much transferred everything from my iPhone 12 over to my 13 Pro. I haven't deleted everything on my 12 yet because I want to have apps on both devices so I can actually extensively compare them. So the first thing I wanted to point out is the humongous camera bump. It is significantly larger compared to the iPhone 12, and also I believe the iPhone 12 Pro, which I don't have currently. I believe it actually takes up a bit more than half the width of this iPhone, and that is pretty noticeable. That also means that you're gonna have to buy a new case, so if you're upgrading from an iPhone 12 or an 11, or actually any iPhone, you're gonna have to buy a new case. And speaking of buying new accessories, you'll have to buy a new screen protector. If you already had like a stash of iPhone 12 screen protectors, which I do. The notch is about 20% slimmer. You can actually tell there's a little bit more screen real estate, and there isn't really any added functionality with that, but at least they're moving in the right direction. I also really like the build quality of the 13 Pro. It's different from the iPhone 12, and I believe it's pretty similar to the 12 Pro. So you have a matte glass finish at the back of the phone, which does feel really smooth to the touch. And then you have a stainless steel finish around the edges of the phone, which does make the phone look really premium. It does attract fingerprints pretty easily, but I'm gonna be using a case anyway. But with the iPhone 12, the entire back part was just a super glossy glass. It's definitely more slippery and attracts a ton of fingerprints, and that's just something to note if you don't use a case. Let's go back to the camera setup. You get a wide, standard, and telephoto lens. The cameras are obviously physically larger, the sensors inside them are physically larger, and the apertures are also wider to allow more light to enter the cameras, and that should yield better low light pictures because more light is entering the camera. Obviously, I've yet to extensively test this out. It'll probably be at least a few weeks before I do a camera comparison between the iPhone 12 and the 13 Pro. Based on the quick camera samples I've gotten, the images are nice and sharp, and there isn't too much noise, especially in low light situations. I also wanted to talk about the new cinematic mode, which does work okay. You can kind of tell that the background blur is artificial, but you can actually tune that down a bit if you change the f-stop, which is kind of cool that you can adjust it. So I think the cinematic mode is a cool addition to the iPhone, but it's definitely not going to be replacing any of my camera setups because it just doesn't look genuine. But I think it is really impressive that Apple managed to include artificial blurring in videos, because when you're shooting video, you're shooting moving objects or you're moving yourself, and that is definitely more difficult to blur out the background compared to a photo that's a still image. As for battery life, I really can't say anything about that right now because I've had this for less than a day. Supposedly, it is greatly improved from the previous iPhone 12 Pro. I don't have a 12 Pro to actually test that out, so I can't comment on that yet. I will definitely compare it to the iPhone 12. Sure, it's not a direct successor to this phone, but it is worth noting if there is a difference in battery life. To wrap up this video, my favorite feature with the iPhone 13 Pro, hands down, has to be the adaptive refresh rate that goes from 10 to 120 Hz. I currently use a 120 Hz ultra-wide monitor for my PC setup, and it works great. When I'm browsing the web and scrolling through web pages on my monitor, it's significantly smoother, and I do get a slight competitive edge in gaming. But with the iPhone 13 Pro, I can also tell a difference. It does look smoother when you're opening apps as well as scrolling through some of them, like on Instagram or TikTok. It's really difficult to capture this on video unless I shoot in slow motion, which kind of defeats the purpose because a slow motion video is not going to show how smooth it is. It's just going to show that the screen refreshes quicker than a 60 Hz refresh rate. The whole experience of just using the phone feels so much smoother. I've also used 90 Hz refresh rates on Android phones, such as the Pixel 5 and OnePlus smartphones, but 120 Hz is just on a different level. It's so crazy smooth. One thing I'm really curious about is how it'll affect battery life, because with a higher refresh rate display, it'll probably decrease battery life compared to if it was just locked to 60 Hz. I'm fairly certain Apple has already thought about this, and especially with the adaptive refresh rate, it'll just tone it down a bit if you're low on battery. So overall, I've been pretty impressed with the iPhone 13 Pro. I can't make any conclusions about this phone yet because I haven't used it for at least a few weeks. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for future videos on the 13 Pro. I'm planning a bunch of videos on this phone and also comparing it with the iPhone 12 and my reasoning behind upgrading to the 13 Pro.